Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about No Rest for the Wicked. Now, Moon Studios has actually had a showcase for their upcoming game, but I wasn't really able to stream it because I've been away on a trip. You guys will be seeing the results of that trip soon in the channel, so look forward to that. But in the meantime, I figured I'd go ahead and check out the showcase for myself and tell you guys what my takeaway was from everything that they said in that presentation. So let's get started. First and foremost, this is a game by Moon Studios. I already mentioned this before, but these are the people that created Ori. This is Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which are both critically acclaimed games, and every time that I talk to anyone that has played an Ori game, they're always like, man, game is awesome, it's amazing, really cool Metroidvania, really cool combat, all of that stuff. So these guys have been very successful with their Ori game. However, they've always had a project in their backbone, which was they wanted to make an ARPG. Apparently, they've been playing ARPGs religiously for the last 20 years, which is quite impressive. And it's one of the things that I always say, if you want to develop a video game, you got to be able to play the video game that you want to develop repeatedly, you know, intensely, relentlessly, with passion, because passion always drives innovation for that genre. You need to be able to play this game, this genre at least, for thousands of hours to really understand it and to understand what makes it good so that you can actually improve on that. So the fact that this team has been playing RPGs for this long, according to what they said in the showcase, and that they're now working on one of their own, brings me a lot of joy and also a lot of hope for what this game can be. Not to mention that just the gameplay that we've seen so far looks really solid. The art style looks amazing, which they touched up on just briefly. They said that they don't want to go for hyper-realism. They want something that almost looks like a painting come to life, which that is kind of what you're getting if you guys pay attention to the gameplay that I'm going to be showing in the background here. That is pretty much what you are getting with this game. It's just like gorgeous art style. I've talked about it at length. And one of the things that they didn't talk about, but I want to bring up, is that their character facial animations are really good. And the reason why this is important is because when you are telling a story, being able to give off subtle hints for what each character is thinking at any given moment is something that I've noticed on a lot of games that are able to portray those micro expressions from characters, is something that really adds to the vibrancy of the story, the texture of the storytelling, and really enables them to tell a good story. Now, whether or not they're going to be able to deliver on that front, we will have to see, but definitely the tools are there. The engine looks gorgeous, and the characters' faces just look very intense, which, like, even from the moment when they showed, like, at the very beginning of the showcase, the king's son, you could tell that the king's son is probably going to be somewhat of an evil character. Other characters look more ambiguous, but they can really portray emotion, I guess is what I'm getting at, which was really cool to see. One of the things that they touched up on during this showcase was the world, and they wanted to really emphasize the fact that this world is not going to be procedurally generated, and I think that the reasoning why they're bringing that up is because usually when it comes to ARPGs, most ARPGs end up going with the procedural generation thing, simply because it allows players to enjoy multiple runs of the same game without necessarily running into exactly the same scenario. Things are in different places and all of that. And I understand that for a lot of people, you might think like, well, I mean, you know, procedurally generated is pretty cool, but I also know that of a lot of people that actually prefer handcrafted worlds, because naturally when you have a handcrafted world, it means that they can position things a lot more intentionally to kind of incentivize exploration or incentivize certain set piece moments and do camera pans and stuff like that. It allows them to do a lot more of those types of things. And personally, I enjoy both. I'm not necessarily against procedural generation, but I don't think that you need to have a procedurally generated game to do an ARPG. I think you can totally do that in a handcrafted world. And they're taking some steps that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the video in regards to how they're going to keep things fresh and whatnot. Now, a couple of the things that they mentioned in regards to the handcrafted world, they want it to be dense, they want it to be very interactable, and they want there to be lots of verticality, which we have already seen in previous gameplay footage, even if it's not all shown in this showcase, even though they did show a significant chunk of verticality, but you know, they did show that that is a thing. And another aspect of it is that you're going to be rewarded for exploration, because for sure, whenever you are doing, the traditional ARPGs that we have gotten over the years, right? And you're going through and it's a procedurally generated level, a lot of times I don't even feel like exploring the entirety of the level anymore because it's procedurally generated. I don't know if there's going to be treasure there or not. So you might be wanting to explore the entirety of a map, even though most ARPG veterans don't even do that anymore unless they're specifically going after, just farming out a map. But like as you are going through the game, most people don't even do that anymore because there's not really that much reward for doing that. It's usually more about, find the boss or find the one mob that gives you loot in this map, kill that and leave as fast as you possibly can, right? So in this game, because it is handcrafted, if you see something that looks like a path, most likely there will be a reward at the end. Maybe there'll be like some type of a puzzle or something that you will have to do in order to interact with the environment, because like they also mentioned, they want everything to be interactable in order to go ahead and get some additional loot or something like that. So that's cool. The game is also going to be featuring a day-night cycle as well as dynamic weather. And one of the things they made sure to mention is that the perspective of this game is not just your traditional top-down like you've come to expect from most ARPGs. They have a bit of a different angle, which gives you this perspective that shows a little bit more of the horizon than what we're used to in most ARPGs, and that enables them to, give you a bit of a different feel to the whole thing, which I thought was cool. Now, one of the next points that they bring up is the controls, and I gotta give them props here because it would be very easy to just follow the old tried and true point and click. And I know that there's a lot of ARPG players that prefer point and click. I can't relate because the moment that I've played Diablo 3 on PlayStation 3 with a controller, I was like, I can never go back to playing a Diablo game with point and click. It's just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, I played Diablo 4, if you guys are aware. I played the whole thing on PS5 using a controller, and to me, that is a much better way of playing those games. And again, I can understand that some people, you guys have been playing ARPGs point and click for so long that this is the way that you want to play them. And I am sorry that that is not going to be an option when it comes to this game, at least according to the showcase. The way that you can play this is controller or WASD. So, you can still click and whatnot, but you are going to be moving your character using WASD. And to me, that is just a much more superior form of control because you can literally be walking backwards, strafing, not strafing, but like you can be walking backwards, kiting your targets, and you can be hitting your targets. And it just gives you so much more control that I don't understand the whole thing about, I click here and then I click this way and shoot and use shift. I don't know. I always thought that was like kind of clunky after experiencing it with the controller, but to each their own. I'm not here to criticize your own personal preferences. Just be aware that the control in this game is going to be WASD or controller, whatever you happen to prefer. And to me, that is very good news. And I believe there were also a significant number of people that wanted WASD in Diablo 4 when that came out, despite the fact that they didn't implement that. So, Now, when it comes to combat, this is one of the things that they really wanted to drive home, that this is animation-driven combat. So this is not your traditional spam all of your abilities super fast and just clear maps gigafast. This is that whole Souls-like aspect of it that they mentioned, wherein your animations are going to have commitment. You're not going to just like, I'm going to hit my attack button. It's just a quick attack animation. No. When you attack in this game, it is a meaty attack animation, and it is going to basically commit your character into that attack, so you need to really plan it out. And there's also a stamina system, so you have to, there's a limited number of attacks that you can go and do with your character, so you got to keep all of those things in mind as you are engaging with the combat system of the game. There's also a certain sense of weight to each of these weapons, which is a good thing. From every single gameplay footage that I've seen, the developers have also said we are emphasizing this animation commitment, weight of the weapons and all of that stuff, and you definitely get the feeling of the weight. Because the animation that they've got going in this game looks really, really good. Whether it feels good or not, I can't tell you, but a lot of creators did get early access to the game, so they've been able to play it. Like, I know that Fighting Cowboy is like a 90-minute stream that you guys can go check out if you're interested. I scrubbed through it a little bit to get an idea of what the combat is looking like, and it's looking pretty friggin' solid. But naturally, when you have a combat like this, the whole combat is going to be about you interpreting the moves that the enemies are doing. Like, they're going to be telegraphed and all that stuff, and you're going to be wanting to pay attention to what they're doing and decide if you want to block, parry, dodge. These are all systems that are going to be in the game as well. So that is going to be a balance that you're going to have to strike. You're going to have to decide, oh, do I want to block this because then I might not have enough stamina to attack? Or do I want to attack because then I'm not going to have enough stamina to dodge? You're going to have to figure that stuff out. There's also a parry system, even though I didn't see too much of that. They showed a little bit of parrying with some daggers to create an opening, and then they were able to do an attack that was kind of like a riposte. But they didn't really go too in-depth on that, but there is a parry system. Another thing that they also showed is that you are able to use environment to kill certain enemies. So the example that they showed was they just shoved one of the enemies off of a platform and he falls down and dies from gravity. But I'm imagining that you could easily have more situations similar to that, not just gravity, but you can maybe shove enemies against spikes or something like that, or shove enemies against fire, or maybe drop rocks on top of enemies and stuff like that. Those are all things that instantly come to mind when you think about a system that rewards you for using its environment, which again goes back to what they've mentioned with their level design and the crafting of their world, and they want a world that is very much interactable. So, you know, they want you to be able to do things to enemies that is going to heavily punish them. And you know, obviously take advantage of what is in the environment. Your character is also going to have a weight system, so you know, you equip heavier armor, your roll is going to suffer. They showcase that in light armor you're able to do a very fast sideways dodge. In medium armor you're able to do like a dodge roll that is still pretty decent, but not as fast as the sidestep that you can do when you're in light armor. So you have that whole system, and I'm assuming you're also going to be able to fat roll if you're in heavy armor and all that stuff, so that's a thing. Now, when it comes to movesets, they say that every single weapon has a unique moveset, but when they say every single weapon, I'm assuming they're talking about, okay, daggers have a moveset. Straight sword has a moveset. Big sword has a moveset, right? That's what they're talking about. Every weapon has a unique moveset, but then they talk about how weapons can drop their unique rune, which can be extracted and used on other weapons. Now, the unique rune is a system that this game has wherein, as you are engaged in combat, basically you're going to be filling up this little orange thing that's on top of your health, and that is your focus gauge. As that thing fills up, you eventually can use a special attack, which I believe is called a rune ability for a weapon, and that will be like a really powerful attack that you can go and do. So instead of you having the traditional mana system or anything like that, you have this rune system wherein you do well in combat, it charges you up, and then you can do your special ability. That appears to be the whole thing, right? So weapons drop their unique rune. It means that you can get the special attack from different weapons. And then they talk about how you can create your own unique moveset, but they don't really give a lot of examples in the showcase. So what I would expect it to be is like, hey, you can grab like the special attack of a greatsword and slap it onto some daggers or something like that. That was my interpretation of what they were talking about in there, so take it with a grain of salt. I could be wrong. If you have a different interpretation of that, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll be very interested to know, but you know, that's what I got from it. But naturally, there might also be some different things like, hey, maybe you pick up a sword, like a one-handed sword, and you extract the runic attack from that, and you put that on an axe, or vice versa. And that allows you to kind of like customize the moveset of your weapon a little bit by changing the rune ability, which gives you a special move. Another thing about rune abilities is that appears to be how mages are going to work. So you're going to get a staff, and the staff can have like, on the specific example that they showed, the staff would have had like 3 runic abilities. One of those was a fireball, and then there was a nova blast or whatever. And it's still the same thing. You still have to like whack things with the staff though. I don't know how ranged attacks are going to work, but in that example they were hitting enemies with the staff, and then you get to cast like a fireball and whatnot. So you do still have to charge those up with melee hits, which can be a little bit annoying. They didn't talk too much about ranged weapons, but we did see a bow. So bow is also going to be a thing. Probably going to be very powerful, I would imagine, if you can charge it from range. It's probably going to be one of the really powerful weapons, but maybe there's limitations as to how you can use the bow. I don't know. Now, when it comes to the loot system, they actually showed us a little bit of this. So there's going to be 4 different rarities of loot. You're going to have your white gear, and white gear is actually not just vendor trash as it tends to be in mostly RPGs. According to them, the thing about white items is that they are the most customizable. Now, I still feel like potentially it's just going to be vendor trash, but the idea is that white items are more customizable than other ones. Then you have your blue items, which are rare items, and they just have positive affixes on them. So like in the example they showed, it was Brothers Keepers, and you have attack speed, stamina refill on parry, attacks deal 15% extra plague damage, and 9% focus on kill. And then you have the purple items, and those are cursed items. So the idea is that the affixes are going to be more powerful. So you can see instantly from going from a rare to the cursed item, attack speed is already higher. Right? You can see that the attack speed goes to 9%, whereas on the rare one it's only 5%. And, so basically your affixes are going to be better, but there's also going to be negative affixes on them. So in this case, it decreases our equipment load by 26%, which, if you guys remember, I already talked about a little bit earlier in the video, that there's a weight system. So this is going to mess with that, and it's going to mess potentially with your dodge roll. Let's keep that in mind. The 4th rarity is going to be gold, and that is going to be the unique items. And unique items, according to them, have unique affixes. So in this case, you have health increase by 17%, root attacks deal 26% bonus damage, 17% bonus damage at full health, and 22% bonus damage against large enemies. So these all sound well and good, but it seems to me like these stats are still probably a little bit RNG. So maybe you'll get these unique stats on this weapon. So this weapon always rolls these, but it rolls them at different percentages, which is why you have weird numbers like 17%, 26%, 17, 22, right? These are not really your traditional numbers. If you wanted to have something that would be just like a unique item that's set in stone, you would have like 15% or 10% or 20%, usually, traditionally. So I'd imagine there's still a certain degree of RNG, even if you are to get a unique item, but those are that is the way that loot is going to work in the game. Now, regarding classes, they're talking about the game having a soft class system, which essentially allows you to make your own class. They didn't really elaborate on that too much. It seemed to me, because they showed like the stats and whatnot, and they showed a bunch of different gear sets that characters would have equipped. Seems to me like what they mean by this is that we want you to equip whatever items you feel like equipping, and then level up stats that benefit those items, and there you go, that's your class. Which is pretty much what we've come to expect from something like a Dark Souls, right? You put in your strength, your dexterity, and then you equip weapons that scale nicely off of those, and Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. So it seems like this is going to be something similar to that. My biggest question is going to be, how easy is it to respec? Because I just think that respec should be a core functionality when it comes to these games nowadays, and it should not be something that involves a bunch of like, oh, you gotta engage with this system, and then you need this amount of gold, and then you need this other thing, and you need this special item. It's like, no. Just let me respec. I think respec should just be something that's present in the game, and let people respec as they want. Doesn't matter. They're still going to have to grind the materials to upgrade the weapons anyway, so who cares? They talked a little bit about bosses, but we've already kind of went over bosses in my previous video. The whole idea is that bosses are going to work much more like you would expect from a Souls-like game, wherein the boss is going to have heavy telegraph attacks. It's going to hit you with very meaty hits, so you really need to be able to read what the openings are. You have to have that pattern recognition skill, and then you're going to jump in whenever the boss gives you an opening, and you're going to punish it. Now, one of the things when I was watching Fightin' Cowboys playthrough, I watched a little bit of it, like I told you guys, he was talking about how the boss was delaying his attacks, and that instantly was like, uh-oh, Margit derangement syndrome, baby, let's go. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of delayed attacks to throw people off. That appears to be like the new form of difficulty that a lot of people that are coming up with Souls-inspired games are pushing for. So yeah, delayed attacks, get ready for it. Now, on a little bit of a different topic, they talked about Sacrament, which is going to be the capital of the place or the continent or whatever where you're going to be playing this game. And the whole idea is that you as the player are going to be rebuilding this place to its former glory. So what exactly does this mean? You're going to be able to invest resources that you can get throughout the world. And you can get these resources by lumberjacking, fishing, and there's going to be other resource collection as well as refinement, which is also going to be unlocked in Sacrament. But as you collect these resources, you then can go to this one NPC in Sacrament and go like, okay, I want you to build this specific thing. And then there's a time associated with how long it's going to take them to build that. And so every player, I'm assuming, is going to at some point have their unique city, but it seems to me like by the end, everybody's going to have the same city, essentially, with one small exception that we're going to be getting into. But, you know, as you invest these resources, you're going to be able to build these facilities that give you the benefits. And some of those benefits can be like better traversal. Like there's one that gives you a lift that connects different sections of town a little bit easier. There's another one that gives you a staircase that allows you to fast travel from different places in town. So it's a little bit more efficient to traverse the town. There's one that unlocks furniture crafting as well as weapon upgrades, and there's a bunch of more stuff. And again, this is going to be an early access, so all of these things are subject to change, which is why I'm not really going into super duper detail. Just be aware that you're going to be able to craft these buildings, and you put resources into them, and these buildings appear in town, and they give you benefits that you would expect, right? Now, the other thing that you're going to be able to do, which is going to be a little bit more unique, is you will be able to buy a house and you're going to be able to fully customize it. There's not even a grid system, so you can just place stuff however you feel like it. And this is a system that I think is very interesting because I think that a lot of video games nowadays really underestimate the importance of players having a location that they consider to be their home base. It's just a really cool feature to have, even if it's something that's somewhat static or whatever. It's just nice to be able to, you know, oh, I just did this hard mission. Let me just go to a place in the game where I can chill for a little bit. I think that is a nice feature to have. So you will be able to buy a house. It's going to apparently cost a bunch of in-game currency. And after you do that, you can actually customize it and put different things on there, put beds and all of the, you know, the usual stuff that you can do whenever there's a housing system in a game. So I like the fact that they're putting that in from the beginning, even though I usually don't tend to engage with those too much. I do like having like my home base and just getting to chill out in there. But yeah. So then they talked a little bit about Endgame, which is naturally going to be something that everybody's going to be curious about. Now, this particular feature, which I found weird that it was mentioned during the Endgame presentation, I don't think this is just Endgame, but they're calling it the Alive system, which basically meant that whenever you visit a certain area, different enemies might take over that area, which is going to be able to provide you with different resources and different things to farm in that area, which is a cool thing because it makes the world feel a little bit more dynamic. And it would be even cooler if you as the player actually get to influence what are the things that show up in those situations, because I'm not sure if that is going to be a thing or not, but we shall see. And then they also talked about how, you know, they didn't want it to give too much away for the end game, but they mentioned something called the Serum Crucible. Serum is our character. Our character is this type of entity called the Serum, which are apparently characters dedicated to defeating the plague. But anyways, they call it the Serum Crucible, and they said that here is where you will fight the toughest enemies in the game. But they don't really give us a whole lot to go off. Then they showed us a little bit about their early access roadmap. So the game is going to be launching on the 18th of April on Steam, and that is when their early access begins. And then their first update is going to be multiplayer. So it seems like when the game launches, it's just going to be single player, and then they're going to add an update for multiplayer, which apparently is going to include not just PvE, but also PvP. You're going to be able to play with friends, do the whole campaign alongside them, and I'm assuming there's going to be some form of either invasions or hostility or an arena, or I don't know, but they said there's going to be some form of PvP in there as well. Then they talk about an update that is the Breach, which I'm assuming it's going to include more content. And then they talk about how they're going to be adding additional narrative and story elements and gameplay and all of that stuff. So this is going to be an early access game. It is going to, be receiving more and more content as things move along. We shall see how that works. But the reality is, in 2024, we've had a lot of really good early access games, which was surprising for me because usually I don't even gel that much with early access games. But we got you got a Paul World, we got Enshrouded, and those two were bangers as far as I'm concerned. So pretty cool. But anyway, that is going to be it for this video. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm going to be jumping in once the game releases in early access. I'm going to be checking it out, giving you guys my opinions on it and all of that jazz. Let me know how you guys feel about it in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.